All right, and then Max is going to give us 5 minutes for an idea, not a new idea, an idea. So Max, you want to come up and share?
Okay. Good morning, everybody. I'm Max. I'm new to Westchester, and I'm relatively new to this group, so I appreciate the invitation to say a few minutes. Let's see if I can introduce this concept in 5 minutes. So I've been wondering about how to introduce my students to keyboard harmony, and specifically to get them on the road to doing Roman numeral analysis of the harmonies that they're playing in more advanced pieces. And so how do we get beyond the 4 primary chords? So my students, they all know 1, 4, 1, 5, and then 5, 7, and 1. So the 3 primary chords with the 5, 7. And so I wanted them to get an idea of what the chords are in the scale before they encounter it in notation. The way that I learned keyboard harmony was very pen and paper, and it was not intuitive at all. And so this is a way that the student can access this knowledge before seeing it in notation. And so this is what I mean when I say a chord scale. It's a scale made up of chords, and the student has to say it and play it. 1 chord C major, 2 chord D minor, 3 chord E minor, 4 chord F major, 5 chord G major, 6 chord A minor, 7 chord B diminished, 1 chord C major, and then they have to go back down and do it in reverse, okay? The say it and play it is very important and very challenging for some piano students because accessing the verbalization while they're doing something is not necessarily easy. And so that's probably not a new idea, but it's something that I didn't learn when I was young, and so it feels new to me. So here's how I introduce this. At this point, the student knows all 12 major scales, and they're playing them pretty well. And they know the arpeggios, and they know the primary chord cadence. And so then I make sure that they know where the labels of the chords come from. Why do we call this a 4 chord in the cadence? That as of knowledge that they might have lost in the ensuing years when they were first introduced to the cadence. Oh, right, because it's based on F and it's the 4th scale degree. Great, okay, then what would a 2 chord be? Ah, so what is that? It's D minor. Ah, okay. So this also assumes that the student knows the difference between a major and a minor chord. If they don't know that yet, then I would have to teach that as well, right? Hello? Hi. I'm Max. I'm doing 5 minutes for an idea. I'm on like minute 3. So I'm gonna demonstrate my chord scale again. This is how I introduce my students to the concept of keyboard harmony and Roman numeral analysis. Without any reference to notation, they learn this. 1 chord C major, 2 chord D minor, etc. They have to say it and play it, okay? After they have done that, of course in the key of C we start, then we go through the keys, and every week they come, they play me their scale. So let's say we're on G this week, etc. Then they play me their arpeggio, etc. Then they do their cadence, G with whatever level of complication they're at. Then I say, okay, where's the G chord scale? 1 chord, G major, 2 chord, A minor, 3 chord, B minor, 4 chord, C major. Even I have to there's that moment of processing, right? They're getting kinesthetic knowledge of the shapes of the chords in the context of the key that they're in. They're getting auditory knowledge of what every chord sounds like in order. And then they're getting the declarative knowledge of saying it, labeling it when they play it. Only after they've done that for a few different keys do I then write in their notebook, capital I, 2 lowercase i's, 3 lowercase i's. And then we have to sometimes have a reminder about what Roman numerals are because I learned them in school and that doesn't happen in school anymore, right? So we have to learn, okay, let's review how do we do Roman numerals, because 4 is confusing with 6, that sort of thing. And then I say to them, all right, now you figure out why I wrote some of them with uppercase letters and some of them with lowercase letters. And depending on their level, they already know, or they're like, I have no idea. And I'm like, okay, go home, do your chord scale, look at what I wrote, figure out, and why does the 7 have that little tiny circle next to it? And by the time they've come back the next week, most students have figured out that the minor ones are lowercase and the major ones are uppercase and the little circles for diminished, okay? They do that in all 12 keys. The more black keys involved, the more challenging it becomes, because it's on the student to find the chord based on what they already know of the scale. They're just building a triad based on the scale, and I try very hard not to show them if they are capable of finding it themselves. After they've learned the chord scales for all of the major keys, then we go back for a second round, and once they finish with the chord scale, then the week after, while they're working on the next scale, they have to do the pachelbel progression, figuring it out. And I will say, 1 chord, now go to the closest 5 chord. No, wait, that's a 5th away. Ah, it's a 4th away, right? And I say go to the closest 6th chord, 3 chord. And they do the pachelbel progression, and so that's a way of applying the chord scale. Again, without any reference to notation. I'm just giving them the Roman numerals in order. And eventually I'll write that down in their notebook too, and they get it figured out. If they've practiced their chord scale, the next week the pachelbel comes together. If they haven't practiced their chord scale, they have no idea. They can typically do 1, 5, 6, and then I say find the 3 chord. You know, they have no idea. So it's an accountability thing for my students. I always say, if you want to play pachelbel well in all the keys, you got to practice your chord scales first, and then you'll have an intuitive knowledge of where that 3 chord is, because that's the hardest one to find. Then, of course, we do it in inversion. So then we do the first inversion. Let's see, 1, 6, C first inversion, 2, 6, D minor first inversion, etc., etc., etc. Okay?
Awesome.
Any questions? Yes.
I do have one small one. Right when you first started, you said they had to say whether it's major or minor. That's precluding the fact that they understand the difference in sound. Is that?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
So that you've already kind of trained them on that a little bit.
Right. At
Okay.
That's a prerequisite.
Okay.
I would make sure the student can identify the difference between major and minor before I'd ask them to figure this out.
Okay.
Yeah. Great. And, well, I usually use this as an opportunity to introduce the concept of a diminished chord. They get to the 7 chord, and they'll B minor? Because there's only one of them, that's when I talk about diminished chords. Yeah. Right, exactly.